The bioluminescent coral formations 40 meters below the surface of Aquatica Prime's endless ocean pulsed with rhythms that had nothing to do with Dr. Sarah Chen's scientific equipment and everything to do with something her instruments couldn't measure. She adjusted her diving gear's neutral buoyancy, hovering in the crystalline water like an awkward visitor to someone else's cathedral. "Okay, sample collection protocol 7 Alpha, she muttered into her comm system, though she knew the surface team couldn't hear her this deep. Because talking to yourself underwater isn't a sign of professional stress at all. The coral formations around her weren't quite coral, they were something between organic matter and living crystal, growing in spiraling towers that seemed to sing in frequencies just below human hearing. Sarah had been studying them for 3 months, and they still made her feel like she was intruding on something sacred. A flash of movement caught her peripheral vision, and she turned to see something that made her forget every protocol in the marine biology handbook. Swimming through the crystal formations with impossible grace was a figure that was unmistakably humanoid yet utterly alien, elongated limbs moving in perfect harmony with the water, elongated ears that seemed to filter the ocean's currents, and skin that bore patterns of bioluminescence matching the coral around her. Sarah's first instinct was to reach for her emergency signaling device. Her second was to crack a joke about meeting the neighbors. Her third, the one that actually happened, was to remain perfectly still and watch in wonder as the being moved through the water like it was her natural element. Because it clearly was her natural element. The thalassari, Sarah had read the xenobiology reports, were known to be aquatic, but seeing one in person was like watching poetry written in fluid motion. The being's elongated ears twitched as she noticed Sarah's presence, and those large, dark eyes widened with what looked like equal parts curiosity and caution. Sarah slowly raised one hand in what she hoped was a universal gesture of peaceful greeting. The thalassari tilted her head, studying the strange visitor with the intensity of someone trying to solve a particularly interesting puzzle. "Hi there," Sarah said softly, knowing the words would be muffled by her breathing apparatus but hoping her tone would carry. "I'm Sarah. I'm not here to cause trouble. Just studying your amazing coral gardens." The thalassari's response was to swim closer, moving with fluid motions that made Sarah's bulky diving equipment feel even more awkward. As she approached, Sarah could see the intricate patterns of bioluminescence that flowed across her skin like living tattoos, pulsing in sync with the crystal formations around them. When the being spoke, her voice carried clearly through the water despite the apparent impossibility of that. "You sing to the crystals," she said, her accent turning the words into something musical. "But you don't hear them sing back." Sarah blinked, processing this unexpected observation. "You speak standard." "Some words," the thalassari replied, hovering gracefully in the water column. "You are, scientist? From the sky people?" "Marine biologist," Sarah confirmed, then added with a grin, though "sky people" has a nice ring to it. Makes us sound more mysterious than researchers who ran out of interesting things to study on their own planet. The thalassari's expression shifted into what might have been amusement. "I am called Naya. These are my people's memory gardens." "Memory gardens?" Sarah looked around at the spiral formations with new eyes. "They store memories." Naya's elongated ears twitched in what Sarah was beginning to recognize as emotional expression. "Each crystal holds experiences. Songs of those who came before. When we touch them, we remember." Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the water temperature. "And we're studying them. Taking samples." "Yes," Naya said simply, but something in her tone suggested layers of meaning that Sarah was only beginning to understand. Around them, the crystal formations pulsed with gentle light, and Sarah realized she was witnessing something far more significant than a chance encounter between species. She was standing, floating, at the intersection of science and the sacred, holding instruments designed to analyze something that was essentially the soul of an entire civilization. "Naya," she said carefully, "I think we need to talk." Over the following weeks, Sarah found herself developing the most unusual daily routine of her scientific career. Official research duties in the morning, equipment maintenance in the afternoon, and clandestine meetings with an aquatic alien in hidden grottos that definitely weren't on any human survey maps. So, Sarah said during one of their encounters, floating beside Naya in a cavern where the crystal formations created a natural amphitheater of light, let me get this straight. Your people basically have a living internet made of singing rocks. Naya's laugh created bubbles that rose toward the cavern's air pocket in spiraling patterns. Sarah had discovered that thalassari could breathe both water and air, which made their conversation significantly easier once they'd found these partially flooded chambers. Not rocks, Naya corrected, running her elongated fingers along a crystal formation that responded with gentle chimes. They are, how do you say, alive. They grow with our experiences, hold our stories, connect us across time. Sarah watched in fascination as the crystal under Naya's touch began to glow brighter, pulsing with patterns that seemed to echo the bioluminescent displays on her skin. And you can access all of it. Like a biological database. More than access, Naya said, her voice taking on a reverent tone. When I touch the memory crystals, I become part of what they hold. I feel what my ancestors felt, see what they saw, know what they knew. That's. Sarah paused, trying to find words for something that challenged every assumption about individual consciousness and collective memory. That's incredible. And terrifying. And probably the most important discovery in the history of consciousness studies. Naya's ears flickered with colors Sarah was learning to associate with concern. Your people, they want to study the crystals. Take pieces away. Sarah felt her stomach perform the kind of gymnastics usually reserved for space sickness. We don't understand what they are. To us, they're just unusual mineral formations with interesting properties. But now you know, Naya said quietly. You understand. I understand, Sarah confirmed, then added with the kind of humor she used when facing existential crises, which means I'm probably going to have to write the most awkward research report in the history of marine biology. Dear colleagues, turns out the coral samples are actually an alien civilization's entire cultural heritage. Recommend immediate policy revision and possibly therapy for the author. Naya's expression shifted to something that might have been confusion. You make jokes when you are troubled. It's a coping mechanism, Sarah admitted. Humor helps humans deal with stress. Though I'm not sure there's enough humor in the galaxy to help me deal with the stress of realizing my research project might be accidentally committing cultural genocide. Cultural genocide, Naya repeated, testing the words. Yes. That is, accurate. They floated in silence for several minutes, surrounded by the gentle music of the crystals responding to their emotions. Sarah found herself studying Naya's profile, the elegant curve of her elongated ears, the way bioluminescent patterns flowed across her skin like living art, the grace with which she moved through both water and air. Naya, Sarah said finally, what happens if I tell my people to stop the sampling? If I recommend we alter our research protocols? You would do that? Naya turned to face her directly, those large dark eyes searching Sarah's face with an intensity that made her feel suddenly transparent. I'm a scientist, Sarah replied. My job is to understand, not to destroy. But I need you to help me understand more. I need to know everything about how the crystals work, what they mean to your people, how we can study them without causing harm. Naya swam closer, close enough that Sarah could see the intricate patterns of light flowing beneath her translucent skin. To understand the crystals completely, you would need to bond with them. To become part of the memory stream. Is that possible? For a human? It has never been attempted, Naya said softly. And it would require. She paused, her ears flickering through several color patterns. It would require trust. Complete trust. Between us. Sarah felt something shift in the water around them, as if the crystals themselves were listening to their conversation. What kind of trust? The kind that changes everything, Naya whispered, and in her voice Sarah heard the echo of something profound and irreversible approaching like a tide that could not be turned back. Around them, the crystal formations pulsed with increasing intensity, as if responding to emotions that neither human nor Thalassari science fully understood. The emergency briefing in the research station's main conference room had the kind of tension that made everyone check their emergency evacuation routes twice. Sarah sat at the far end of the table, watching her colleagues argue about expansion protocols while her mind kept drifting to crystal caverns and bioluminescent conversations that officially didn't exist. The geological surveys confirmed significant mineral deposits in grid sections 7 through 12, announced Dr. Williams, the mission's geological specialist, projecting holographic displays that showed the ocean floor marked with extraction zones. We could triple our research capacity with targeted excavation. Sarah felt her stomach drop toward her boots. Grid sections 7 through 12 encompassed most of the sacred crystal formations she'd been secretly exploring with Naya. Have we considered the potential ecological impact? She asked carefully. Standard environmental protocols will be observed, replied Mission Commander Blake, a man whose idea of environmental sensitivity involved asking permission before strip mining entire ecosystems. The local aquatic species have shown no signs of complex territorial behavior. Actually, Sarah said, then stopped herself before she could reveal information that would require explaining how she'd obtained it. Actually, I think we should conduct more thorough behavioral studies before proceeding. Dr. Williams looked at her like she'd suggested they consult a magic 8-ball for scientific guidance. Sarah, we've been here 3 months. The locals avoid our equipment, show no interest in our activities, and demonstrate basic intelligence at best. There's no indication of complex social structures that would be disrupted by limited excavation. Sarah bit her tongue to keep from explaining that the locals had complex social structures spanning thousands of years of collective memory, and that their apparent disinterest in human activities was actually sophisticated avoidance behavior designed to protect sacred sites from alien contamination. I'd like to request additional time for observational studies, she said instead. Commander Blake consulted his mission timeline with the expression of someone doing unpleasant math. Dr. Chen, we're operating on a strict schedule. Corporate wants preliminary excavation to begin within 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Sarah's voice cracked slightly. That's not enough time to properly assess. It's enough time to collect samples and move forward, Blake interrupted. Unless you have specific evidence of potential complications. Sarah stared at the holographic display showing extraction zones that would devastate everything Naya had shared with her, everything the Thalassari held sacred. She had 2 choices: reveal her secret contact with the local population and risk both their careers, or watch her colleagues unknowingly commit what amounted to cultural vandalism on a massive scale. I need more time, she repeated weakly. Blake's expression suggested his patience was approaching critical depletion. Dr. Chen, if you have concerns about the excavation plan, please submit them in writing through proper channels. Otherwise, we proceed as scheduled. Sarah left the briefing feeling like she was carrying the weight of 2 civilizations on her shoulders. She made her way to the dive platform, suited up with mechanical precision, and descended toward the crystal grottos where she hoped Naya would be waiting. She found her friend in their usual meeting place, floating among crystal formations that seemed more agitated than usual, pulsing with patterns Sarah had never seen before. They're going to start excavation, Sarah said without preamble as she swam into the grotto. 2 weeks. They don't understand what they're about to destroy. Naya's entire body flickered with bioluminescent patterns that looked like distress signals. The memory gardens in those areas hold our oldest songs. Our creation stories. Our first contact with the star singers who taught us to shape crystal with thought. I tried to delay them, but I can't tell them about you without risking everything we've built, Sarah said, frustration making her voice harsh even through the water. I need something concrete, something I can show them that proves these formations are more than just interesting minerals. Naya swam closer, her expression intense with decision. There is a way. But it would change you. Change us both. What kind of change? To truly understand the crystals, to prove their nature to your people, you would need to bond with the memory stream. To become part of our collective consciousness. Naya's ears flickered with colors Sarah had learned to associate with deep emotion. But such a bond, once made, cannot be broken. You would carry our memories always, and we would carry yours. Sarah felt the weight of the decision settling around her like deep water. What would that mean, practically? It would mean, Naya said softly, that we would be connected. Not just friends, not just allies, but something new. Something neither fully human nor fully thalassari. And in exchange? In exchange, you would have the knowledge you need to save the memory gardens. You would understand their true nature, be able to demonstrate their consciousness to your people. Naya paused, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. But you would also be bound to protect them always. It would become as much your sacred duty as ours. Sarah floated in the crystal-lit water, surrounded by living memory and facing a choice that would determine the fate of two species' relationship. Around them, the formations pulsed with anticipation, as if the ancestors themselves were waiting for her answer. How? She asked simply. Naya smiled, and in that expression Sarah saw both joy and sorrow, hope and fear, and the recognition that some bridges, once crossed, became the foundations for entirely new worlds. Follow me, Naya said, swimming toward the deepest part of the grotto where the oldest crystals sang with the voices of thousands of years. There is something I must show you. Something I must give you. The deepest chamber of the grotto was a cathedral of living crystal, formations that had grown for millennia reaching toward each other to create arches and spires that seemed to defy both physics and imagination. Bioluminescent patterns flowed through the crystalline structures like rivers of light, carrying information and emotion in currents that made Sarah's hair stand on end despite being underwater. This is the heart chamber, Naya whispered, her voice filled with reverence. Where the first memory singers learned to give their experiences to the crystals. Where bonds are made that transcend individual existence. Sarah swam through the luminous water, feeling the crystal formations responding to her presence with gentle chimes that seemed to welcome her despite her alien nature. It's beautiful, she breathed, then added with nervous humor, and also terrifying in a way that suggests I'm about to make a life-altering decision in a place that probably has very strict return policies. Naya's laugh created bubbles that danced upward in spiraling patterns, but her expression remained serious. Sarah, what I am about to offer you is sacred to my people. It has never been shared with someone from another world. I understand, Sarah said, though she suspected she only understood a fraction of what she was agreeing to. Naya swam to the chamber's center, where a formation of blue-white crystal grew in impossible spirals, reaching toward the chamber's apex like frozen music. She placed both hands on the formation, and immediately the entire chamber blazed with light as every crystal resonated in harmony. When the light faded, Naya held something in her cupped hands, a ring of living metal twisted with blue crystal that pulsed with its own internal luminescence. The metal seemed to flow and shift even as Sarah watched, while the crystal core beat with rhythms that matched her own heartbeat. This is a soul bond ring, Naya said, her voice trembling with emotion. Crafted from the deep metal that grows in our planet's core, joined with crystal that has absorbed the memories of my family line for 20 generations. Sarah stared at the ring, understanding instinctively that she was looking at something priceless beyond any human comprehension of value. Naya, I can't accept something that's sacred. I'm not. I don't belong to your people. You belong to the memory gardens now, Naya replied softly. You have touched the crystals with respect, listened to their songs, felt their pain. You are already more connected to them than many of my own kind. She moved closer, holding the ring between them like an offering to forces neither science nor tradition had prepared them to understand. If you accept this, you will be bound to me and through me to all thalassari who came before and all who will come after. You will carry our memories, feel our connections, understand our purpose. And you? Sarah asked. What would you carry? Your curiosity, Naya said with a smile that transformed her entire face. Your humor in the face of the impossible. Your dedication to truth even when it costs you everything. Your human way of seeing wonder in places we have learned to take for granted. Sarah reached out with trembling hands, not quite touching the ring. "This means we're one," she said, repeating words she somehow knew were part of an ancient ritual. "This means we're one," Naya confirmed, her ears flickering through every color pattern Sarah had ever seen and several she hadn't. "Not human, not Thalassari, but something new. Something that can bridge our worlds." Sarah took the ring, feeling warmth flow through her fingers as the living metal recognized her touch. The crystal began to pulse in sync with her heartbeat, and suddenly she could feel everything. The memories stored in the crystal formations around them, the collective consciousness of a species that had learned to share experience across generations, the deep currents of emotion and knowledge that connected every Thalassari to their heritage. But more than that, she could feel Naya's memories, her childhood swimming through crystal gardens, her first understanding of the memory songs, her wonder at meeting a human who could appreciate the sacred nature of things beyond her own species. "I can feel it," Sarah whispered, tears mixing with the water around her face. "All of it. The connections, the memories, the purpose. It's overwhelming." "It will settle," Naya assured her, reaching out to steady her as the psychic connection established itself. "And now you understand what we would lose if the excavation proceeds." Sarah nodded, the full weight of the memory garden's significance flowing through their new bond. "I can show them. I can make them understand." "More than that," Naya said, swimming closer until they were floating face to face in the crystal-lit water. "You can speak for us. You can be the bridge between our peoples." Sarah looked down at the ring on her finger, watching the way it pulsed with shared heartbeats and intertwined destinies. "No pressure or anything," she said with a shaky laugh. "Together," Naya said, taking her hand so that their rings touched and sent cascades of light through the crystal formations around them, "we can protect what matters while building something new." As they swam toward the surface together, Sarah felt the weight of two worlds' hope settling around her like a mantle she was still learning to wear. But she also felt, flowing through their bond, the unshakable certainty that some connections were worth crossing any bridge to preserve. The ring on her finger pulsed with the rhythm of shared purpose, and Sarah realized that she was no longer just a marine biologist studying unusual formations. She was something entirely new, a guardian of living memory, a bridge between species, and half of a bond that would change the course of history for both their peoples. Above them, the surface world waited, unaware that everything was about to change.